All right, here we are with this a priori foundations of Vedic knowledge. You will have the whole text for yourself in details with all the references, so you don't need to worry about that. Let me project the presentation. This what I'm going to present today actually changed my view on the Veda, on the texts. I'm reading the original texts for more than 3 decades, 3.5 decades already, 40 years already. God. So, and I never could totally break through without this understanding, yes? And maybe 2 decades back, I discovered this knowledge, by knowing which everything can be known. That means the beginnings, how creation came into being, and what for we are here. What is all this about, and what it is for? Once we go through this basics, you will see that all the knowledge you have will be aligned in a very efficient way. Everything will find its niche and position proper to other positions. Everything could be explained by everything through this particular knowledge. You will see the magic trick. And I'm selling the product before I showed you what it is. Yeah? All right. I think you see the presentation. So the Vedic vision and triple transformation. The triple transformation is the integral yoga, and we will come to it at the end. In the light of Sri Aurobindo and the mother. These are the sketches mother made, and she was drawing Sri Aurobindo and herself. So I will start straightforward. Veda is the earliest gospel we have of man's immortality, says Sri Aurobindo. The central conception of the Veda is the conquest of the truth out of the darkness of ignorance, and by the conquest of the truth, the conquest also of immortality. We do not use the word immortality anymore. It's something like taboo word. Immortality is only for some kind of thought, some soul or something beyond. You go to the paradise. It's a religious form of thinking. If the soul is immortal, everything else is mortal. But it's not the case with the Veda. The Veda was seeking the immortality in the embodied being, which is, truly speaking, unthinkable to all the religions we know today. Nobody dares to go that far. Everybody speaks about the immortality of the soul. Yes, soul is immortal. Soul leaves the body. Body is dropped, and that's it. You're going to paradise. In some religions, you go either to paradise or to hell for time sempiternal, forever and ever. You will be tortured in hell or enjoying in the paradise. But these are such, how to say, such strange approximations of this knowledge. It's not at all that way. So there is something happening in this manifestation, and there is a constant ongoing search for manifestation of the truth in its fullness, and by that manifestation of immortality, eternal life, which is continuing through these vicissitudes and through this constant dying and being born, as it were. So I will start with the beginning, from the very beginning, where there was nothing at all. By the way, there is always this kind of view, and I would be interested to hear your voices on this. Some people believe that, there are many descriptions of the beginnings. Veda also has many descriptions. It starts with that at the beginning was the self, yeah, and or at the beginning was the spirit Brahman and nothing else. At the beginning was the darkness, night. At the beginning was these dark waters, apraketam salilam. Or even death was at the beginning. We hear these different beginnings, or at the beginning was nothing, and then something came into being. So, what is your sense of what was at the beginning? Was there something or there was nothing? Was there one or there was zero? I'm just curious to hear your voices. Some people will say zero, others will say one was there. Yes, Krista. Krista is the most
I
courageous.
would say both. It's non-dual, so there's both and, not either or.
Right. But if you choose either or, what is primary to you? Zero or one? I don't give up easily. I could push you into the corner.
I can't answer that question.
Oh, good. Don't want to go into the corner. No, nobody. Some people say one, others say zero. Pythagoras has a treatise which starts one is one, two is three, three is six. That is the whole uh, writing of Pythagoras. And some mathematicians were objecting, saying that he should have started with zero. Why didn't he start it with zero, but with one? Yes, Sandra. Sandra got some idea.
Yeah. Um, I, uh, I think that's an intriguing question. It seems to me there has to be something so that something can come, that there has to be a possibility. And I've been reading a lot about the void lately, about a vacuum. A vacuum in space is actually all kinds of realms of possibility. It isn't nothing. So I just want to um, um, just mention that as that perhaps as the
Right.
void that there is something, a possibility. That's
Right.
all.
Yeah, thank you. Any other thoughts? No? The philosophers are here. Yes, Namni.
Um, I don't know. I think instinctually for me, one comes, but I also just wonder, like, since it wasn't the mind that created, like, this is numbers, and now we are like talking about something. So I wonder if it's applicable to whatever was first anyway.
Right,
Like,
right. We,
yeah, both those
well,
things.
well, zero. I think later we will see that zero is another look at one. Yes, zero tells us that there is nothing but one. Zero is not a number. It is actually not a number, even mathematically. If you start multiplying on zero, you cannot multiply, you cannot divide. Zero is not a part of this system. It is actually underlying the oneness. Oh, you, Helena, please.
Mm. Um, this made me think of in interpersonal neurobiology, Dan Siegel talks about the plane of possibility. And it feels like a similar idea of like, it is the void, it is nothingness. And it's something that most people fear, but it's actually, it holds all possibility. So, like you said, it's like a zero concept, but it actually holds the one because it's the only place that holds all possibility.
Absolutely. So zero tells us that there is only one. That's what zero tells us. So that's why it is needed from the beginning. It is actually underlying the oneness. It is holding the oneness, as you rightly said. So there is something there within that zero as a circle. Notice it is even drawn as a circle. Within that circle, there is something. And that something is something which exists. Yeah. And Well, we can come to it later. There is the whole mathematical procedure I actually discovered. Because if you think of one, what is one? 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 plus 3, and so on, 5. You go on multiplying, you know all the numbers. But when you arrive at 1, you just don't know what 1 is, yeah? Because 1 is not derived from 2, it's 2 is derived from 1. So the whole range of numbers, infinite numbers, are derived from something which is not derived from anything, yeah. And in that sense, it's I asked this question to the professor of mathematics. Yeah, I told him, I understand what is 2, what is 3, what is any number, but I don't understand what 1 is. And he said, very interestingly, you are asking the most difficult question, actually, in mathematics, because it is the only number which we can choose at will. So if I choose this is on the scale that this is 1, then 2 is this. But if I choose this is 1, then 2 is this. And so on. And if I choose the whole scale as 1, where is 2? So the 1, that's why Pythagoras starts 1 equals 1. 1 is 1. It is actually the only number which is identical to itself. The only, because 2 is not 2. 2 is 3. Once you have 2, you have already 1 and 2, and it is 3 in its qualitative, sense. Yes, there were a few people. Yes, Marin and somebody else was there before. Please share your thoughts.
Yeah, so my name is Marin.
Yes.
I'm just joining this class, so I'm catching up a little bit. And looking at this quote that we're seeing here with the Veda is the conquest of truth out of the darkness of ignorance. I'm curious if they're kind of saying also that like 0 is this ignorance, or maybe a better way to understand it modernly would be like the primordial awareness or primordial life, right? Because it's just ignorant of itself, but it still is something, but it doesn't have the consciousness of truth, which maybe is the 1. And I'm also curious if they ever allude to like the feminine masculine dynamic here in referring to the 0 and 1.
Absolutely to the point, everything, and feminine, masculine, and absolutely to the point. So to arrive at 1 means oneness, yes, everywhere. You have to go through 0. If you want to get to the real 1, yes. If you want to go to smaller 1, you go through smaller zeros. So you need that background, that clear, to clear up the field, to have fresh perception. And then you always arrive through fresh perception to something which is real. And that is 1. 1 is always leading us to this reality. But this is kind of very nice. So there was somebody else, but she disappeared. Okay, I will start.
It was me, and I took it off. I was just
Right.
like, I don't know if
Sorry,
I'm gonna.
Adriana.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking like connecting it to the body and thinking that like between the relationship of the womb and the individual in the womb.
Right.
From the womb comes the 1, right? If there is no womb in there, so I connected 0 to the womb.
Perfect. By the way, in the Gita, Sri Krishna says exactly this. I am the one, yes, Purushottama, the Lord, the Supreme. And my spirit 0, is Samam Brahman, the equal spirit, is my yoni. Yoni is actually the womb, into which I cast the seed, from which everything comes into being. So spirit holds the ground, yes, of all the multiplicities born from the 1, in all the forms and relations. It is the spiritual entity, Brahman, 0, and Atman, self, the 1. Absolutely. We arrived at very interesting. Yes, Lyubov.
Can you also say that everything is born from the formless absolute, which is neither 1 or 0, because those are 1 and 0 are still concepts inside the mind, and it's kind of beyond number altogether. So perhaps it's closer to say like it's infinity.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, but you can say that way that we are using the mind. Unfortunately, we cannot step out of the mental operations, so we will have to use symbols, numbers, just to orient our mind towards something which is beyond mind and beyond symbols. Yes. So in that sense, yes, you're absolutely right. It's an absolute which cannot be, which is neither personal nor impersonal, which is both, as already it was mentioned by Christo. Christo said he refuses to say who is first, chicken or the egg. I would say neither chicken nor egg. The cock is the first. And then chicken and egg comes into being. It's a joke. But it's actually the same problem. Yes, who is first? And here we will look into this again from the beginning. So I'm starting from the beginning. I took a few texts and translated them briefly for our purpose. So it is Shatapatha Brahmana, it is Brahmanic text for Shukla Yajurveda. At the beginning was the self. I put the sun for you to see how it is. He was alone. It's important. Alone, what it means that there is zero. There is nothing but the one. He looked around and didn't find anybody, nobody else except himself. So he looked there, he looked here, he looked everywhere, wherever there was somewhere, something, he found nobody else but himself. So it's me everywhere, me, only me, because there is nobody else. So only one. And he said, I am. But there was no other name to say, for he was alone. This is the text, so beautiful. He couldn't say who he was because there was nobody else. There was nobody to compare with, not to name even himself. He couldn't name himself. And then I skipped a lot of lines, but I will bring them here because it's interesting for psychology. Then he became afraid. And Shatapatha Brahmana says, yes, the one who is alone is always afraid. And then he thought, whom am I afraid of if I alone am? And fear vanished. And Shatapatha Brahmana says, yes, fear always comes from another. Wow, what a definition of fear. Fear comes from otherness of self. If you are everywhere, you cannot be afraid because you are extended into all this oneness. But if you see the difference, just smallest, or even anticipate the difference, you start shrinking to yourself. And this shrinking to yourself is fear. And then, but he was not happy, continues the text. He wanted another. First he was afraid of that another, anticipating another, looking for it, then afraid of it, but that it may be there, then not finding it, he started to want it. Just think about the psychological shifts. They are profound. They are primordial, so to say. They are fundamental, original. Actually, it's all what we inherited. We are the one, actually. And we are constantly looking for ourselves outside, inside, everywhere. We want to expand ourselves and to be everywhere, in everyone. See everyone in oneself and oneself in everyone. And until we find that, we will be always in this position of shrinking and wanting, coming back and expanding. All the time, this will be the movement. So this is the text. I'm not reading it again. There are many texts which were puzzling me with this particular description of reality. Maybe I will come to this later. So Sri Aurobindo says about creation in this way. Why should Brahman, who is perfect, absolute, infinite, needing nothing, desiring nothing, at all throw out force of consciousness to create in itself these worlds of forms? Why, really? Can there be any reason to do that? If you alone, omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, everything, all the bliss is within you, all the awareness of yourself is you. Why to go into this trouble to want another? If then being free to move or remain eternally still, to throw itself into forms or retain the potentiality of form in itself, it indulges, notice, indulges, it indulges its power of movement and formation, it can be only for one reason, for delight. He wanted another for delight, for enjoyment, for interaction and enjoyment. And there is a beautiful description by the mother. Mother says that, the Supreme possesses Ananda. Ananda is the bliss. Possesses Ananda in his supreme identity already. He is omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniblissful, let us say. Yes, he doesn't need more bliss, but there is something in him which wanted additional Ananda, additional bliss to that what he has. It's not the bliss by identity. It is not, he already possesses himself in self-identity, but it is the bliss from unity, not from identity. And that is the reason of all the creation. He wanted more bliss. This is a very blissful statement. He wanted additional bliss to his absolute bliss. He wanted to add the bliss of unity. Cannot be better description of the reason of creation. So all this, as Taittiriya would say, all comes from the bliss, lives by the bliss, and goes into bliss. Yes, all comes from Ananda, and lives by Ananda and goes into Ananda. The whole world is nothing but the manifestation of this bliss. The mother describes the manifestation in this way. The Supreme, says the mother, decided, she is much more practicable, she thinks in practical terms, decided to exteriorize himself, objectivize himself in order to have the joy of knowing himself in detail. Again, joy of knowing himself in detail. This is that additional Ananda of unity. To be able to see himself. Can you imagine? He never saw himself because there is no object. He is not objective to himself. He is one subject, one self. The first thing in himself which he exteriorized was the knowledge of the world and the power to create it. So within himself there is the consciousness, awareness, and power which he put forward, as it were, for this task, to manifest himself as another, to become another, to be somebody else, in order to have relations with that other of unity of bliss. This knowledge, consciousness, and force, this is the typical word, chit tapas, chit shakti, consciousness, force, began its work. And in the Supreme Will, there was a plan. And the first principle of this plan was the expression of both the essential joy, Ananda, and the essential freedom, which seemed to be the most interesting feature of this creation. Now here you see major human rights. essential joy. We all have the right to joy and freedom. All the rest falls into these two. These are the major freedom. It's to be myself, and joy to enjoy myself in the world. Yes. What else is here to gain? Only these two things. So how could you, who alone are, create another? What would you do? Any thoughts? You are everywhere. You are everything. You know everything. You you feel everything. There is nothing you lack, and still you want another. So how could you make another if you everywhere only you? Yes, Sandra. Oh, you have to unmute yourself. There is this microphone in the left corner. If you click on it.
I'm sorry. We would think, and when we think, we create. We create a form. We move that thinking and create. That would be my answer.
All right. Good. And anybody else? You have to do something drastical. No, thinking, yes, it's important. He thought, he wanted, he spoke even, although there was no mouth, there was no thought, there was no brain to think. Yeah? But there was something there. Yes, I see Anshul and Helena.
I would talk to myself. I would speak to myself as if I am the other, and just talking would enable me to perceive myself as the other. Because I've often talked to myself, and I see a different part of me listening, and when I speak to that part of me, I didn't know it existed until I spoke to it, because it responds eventually. So that's what I would do if I was everywhere and all alone.
Beautiful. When you say that you would speak to yourself, that means your consciousness turns onto yourself, onto your infinite self with all infinite varieties and properties and powers, and draws from them something. So you start recognizing yourself as this and that. You learn about yourself, of your infinite capacities and so on. This is something exactly what he did, yes, with his consciousness. His consciousness started to draw from that infinite being elements into his own awareness, as it were. As in a mirror, he started to see different elements as himself, as it were, not himself, as it were now, yes. He himself sees himself as not himself now. That fits with Sandra's thinking, with your mirroring and talking to yourself. Yes, Helena, Salana, and Eileen.
Yeah, this just makes me think of the beginning of relationship with self, which implies two, at least. And which I know a lot about from the Jungian individuation perspective. But it's a significant event, right? And it involves not only this epic process of starting to get to know the self, but understanding that it is also, everything outside of us is a reflection of the self as well. And so it almost opens up this entirely new layer to someone if they begin this process of seeing everything differently and seeing everything as a reflection of the self.
Yeah, beautiful. We are talking within the context which is already manifested. The maniness is multitude creation came into being already, and so we are operating within this system already given to us. And you can imagine when you are alone and there is nobody else, and wherever you go, you use this word outside. This is the key word, actually. how can he be outside himself if he everywhere is? What should you do to be outside in order to have that relation with your own self as another? Because you will have to create that gap between yourself and yourself, so to say. And in that sense, that gap is the problem, how to create it, where to get it from. Yes, Alana.
Yeah, so what came to me was if I have to really personalize and think, then I would dream. I would dream of what it would be, what kind of world I want to create. So it's almost like that indigenous way of dreaming the world into being is what came to me if I was in such a position. So a dream.
So the dreamer in him is his consciousness, is Shakti, Chit Shakti. She dreams him, yes? She draws from him his elements of being and puts them into the perspective that he may have his relations with himself through her. Yeah? He is lost in her and found himself anew in her, so to say. She is in charge now. Yes, Eileen.
Hi. Yeah, similarly, I was drawn into what you're speaking of now in the imagination, the imaginal creation, but also what keeps coming up is how we've been talking about the reflection of the self and how if I'm everything or everything is me, and to create that imaginal reality, then I keep thinking of the veil that was placed to create the illusion of the division of self, even though it's all one. So I just keep coming back to that creative aspect and then the veil of forgetting that plays into that experience.
Very nice. The key word is forgetting. Yes, Debbie.
As we're talking, I'm going back to the line on the slide about exteriorizing the knowledge of the world and the power to create it, which for me is implying that when he turned his consciousness to himself and created that sense of now there's two, that he also gave the other the power to create. Am I reading that right? So that the other now is also creating a reality and otherness.
Out of himself. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You see, how do you know all these things, people? Just want to ask you. We all know it because we are that. Yeah? We are operating on the microcosmic level in the same manner as it was from the beginning of time. Yes? We are that person who wants to know himself, herself, in all the varieties, all the relations. Yes, this expansion of oneself. So, in order to exteriorize, to cast himself out, he has to cast himself out, but there is no out because he is everywhere. So he has to create the outer location where he would cast himself as another. And that is the first creation. The first creation, the eternal night. Night, says the Veda, was born out of the shining truth of the supreme power. From the night, the waters of the inconscient came into being, and from the waters of the inconscient, the time was born, the creator of all that moves. It's a very short hymn till the end of the Rig Veda, the hymn of creation. So, night was born out of the shining truth of the Lord, of the One Self. that very zero we were mentioning all the time had to be located, created, activated, if you will, into which the seed will be cast, and which will become the location for all our souls, yes, to manifest. There has to be a location where he will be projected as many. So the night is something. When we say in the Bible that at the beginning Lord said, yes, let it be light, and there was light. Here in the Veda, the Lord said, let it be night, because he was light. They say he couldn't be night. So it's kind of amazing to think. So there is a description of the creation starting from the night, from nothingness, but it is from this stage where he already, so to say, manifested that zero for himself, into which he will bring all his infinite qualities and details of his infinite existence and being, spelling them out in time and space. So the night is that gap between being and being. It was introduced as if into himself, as if introduced, yes, that which separated his properties, qualities, events, and that created the gap, the distance between him and himself. That was the possibility for him to be another, so to say, or to be many. Many is actually inevitable for this creation. Yeah. So there is a beautiful, also from Aitareya Upanishad, out of himself he cast a luminous shadow, all these worlds, from the superconscient to the inconscient, with the gradations, moving away and away from himself, as it were, withdrawing his supreme knowledge, supreme awareness, from his supreme power. Knowledge withdrawing awareness from his power, becoming unaware of these worlds as himself. Whoa. Power is there, but awareness of that power that it is him is not there. That is the night. The light is withdrawn. The awareness is withdrawn from the substance of his own power. Quite a thing, yeah? And it is from the night that manifestation comes into being. But how? Night is negation of himself. I will come to this negation of himself, forgetting himself in his own being, in one part of himself that he is not aware of what it is. There are beautiful lines from Savitri in the enigma of the darkened vasts. In the passion of self-loss of the infinite, a contradiction founds the base of life. The eternal, the divine reality has faced itself with its own contraries. Being became the void, one became the zero, and the conscious force, nescience, and walk of blind energy. And ecstasy took the figure of world pain. Huh. Of course, when we say out of himself, we mean that this casting himself out, it means he withdraws his awareness from his own power, and in that sense it is actually creating outside of himself. So this turn of his being into zero, of oneness everywhere, into void and conscious force and into nescience and walk of blind energy. Notice everything changed into the opposite. The consciousness turned into the darkness, light turned into the darkness, the ecstasy, the bliss turned into the pain, and only the energy, the conscious force, the force did not change into the weakness, but changed into the blind energy. Energy which has no awareness of what it is about, does not have connection to the Supreme anymore. It is there, it is acting, but it is unaware of whose it is and what it is about. Yes, Christo and Debbie.
Yeah, I'm finding it very interesting the way the mood changed when it went from the translation of the Rig Veda to the Aurobindo using English to describe what he's sensing. So the translation of the Veda was still kind of inscrutable to me as we were reading through it. For example, the power comes from the power. What kind is the Sanskrit have, numerous ways of describing power
Oh yeah,
but now
yeah, sure, absolutely. You are right. I read your notes. They are very valuable. We will look into this Sanskrit, what Sanskrit does to our mentality. It has this really very precise power of cognition of what we are dealing with. Yes, because of
I'm
its
sure
Mhm.
that's why Aurobindo's translation is so powerful, because he's doing that articulation for us. And I noticed Island mentioned this in his posting for this past week. The value of the Aurobindo translation, his precise use of language, or his mastery of English, that enables us to peer into the Sanskrit a little bit.
And it's not just mastery, it is charged with consciousness of experience. Yes, he actually already molded the English into some other instrument of knowledge. He
Well,
really
yeah.
reforged that. It's a new language, with new capacity. Yes, Debbie.
I'm linking this to what we were just talking about, and what I'm sensing or feeling from this is that the power to create that he shared with the other as he brought that into being has allowed the many to come, because we have the power to create, and the world is creating itself, but he withdrew the knowledge that all of that creation is an essential, like, one with Brahman, right? Is there something here that implies that Brahman has also lost that sense of oneness? That there has to be something that happens in our human consciousness to reconnect, to make Brahman aware of that oneness too.
Brahman is actually the sense of oneness of one. Brahman is the spirit which leads us to the one. Yeah, it is holding the one, and that's why it is everywhere the same. As Sri Aurobindo describes Brahman in the Life Divine, he says that we may think that, for example, the solar system is much bigger quantitatively from the anthill. No? We will compare to anthill the solar system. It's so huge, and anthill is very small. But he says it's an illusion because Brahman quantitatively also is the same in the solar system and in anthill. But then we think, oh, anthill is much more qualitatively, is much more developed than solar system. It's a living organism, a living society. So it's greater than solar system. But he says it's again an illusion because it's a qualitative illusion. So because Brahman is everywhere holding the oneness. This is the spirit which was discovered in the Upanishads mainly, because Brahman in the Vedas are the word, not yet the spirit in full sense. But what is interesting here is that that zero which occupies the world, yeah? Holding the one. Sorry, I will have to drink something. That zero which holds everything, this one turned into the being, became the void, and the conscious force, nescience, absence of consciousness, and the walk of the blind energy. Energy is there, but it is blind. It is pushing from below. Yes, this dark energy, dark matter. Look at our universe, how much dark matter is there. Yeah? It's a very huge potential. It is him who forgot, who withdrew his awareness from himself. Yes, and that is his own substance. And because of that, the narrowing down of the consciousness created narrowing down of bliss, which became the pain. So I want to a little bit proceed more and open to the discussion a little later. So Mother speaks of creation in this way. Let me, my voice is it's amazing. So she speaks of the creation in this way, that once at the beginning, I will give you the whole text where Mother speaks in all the details. You read and let us discuss this in our discussion forum. There were first 4 emanations of consciousness in light, that is his own awareness, yes, which was put forward, bliss, his ananda, yeah, truth, his own reality, so that he is real to himself, and finally life. Life is what we can translate as his own beingness, yeah, his own existence, the substance of his own, beingness is the best way to say, in Heideggerian terms, beingness, yes, of being. That very existential part, which is totally real truth and absolutely blissful and conscious. So what do we see here? We see here Chit, Ananda, Vijnana, and Sat. Sat, Chit, Ananda, Vijnana. Those 4 transcendental levels of himself, which were manifested or projected out of himself into this zero. Yeah? The zero, or spirit, now holds his emanations. And these 4 emanations here, they are drawn by in the picture of Huta. Mother was meditating with the Huta, with the ashramite, and gave her a sketch how to draw these 4 emanations. You see the Supreme here, the one, that one who alone is and was and always will be. And these his emanations, his own awareness, his own bliss, his own truth, and his own existence, life, body, being. And when they were given this task to manifest the worlds by the mother, so to say, his Chit Shakti, then having in mind total freedom and bliss, they started to do it, and they forgot that they are representatives of the Supreme. They slowly cut themselves off the connection to the Supreme. So the consciousness in light slowly fell into its opposite, into the total darkness. Yeah, and dragged after itself the bliss, which, because there was no awareness, there could not be bliss. So bliss also was dragged into the opposite, into the suffering. You see at the bottom these pictures, darkness, suffering. Then truth was turned slowly into falsehood, and life, his eternal life, turned into death. So for the first time in his infinite life, he could die. He never could die before. But now there is an opportunity. When this happened, Mother says, it's a story to the ashram children. It's like a fairy tale. The Divine Mother turned to the Supreme and said, look what happened. They turned into opposite. The consciousness in light fell into opposite, the bliss into suffering, the truth into falsehood, into total distortion of your reality, and your life itself into death. And he said, well, you find the greater force in the infinite, in his own being, and precipitate these fallen emanations with that force. Bring greater consciousness, greater bliss into it, greater truth, greater life, in order to bring them back to their self-awareness of what they are. So what does it tell me, this kind of story, is that the darkness is nothing but the light, which forgot or disconnected from the Supreme, which forgot what it is. The darkness is the light. The suffering is the bliss, which disconnected itself from the oneness of the Supreme. The falsehood is the truth. And we know that because falsehood always pretends to be true. The falsehood never pretends to be false. Always wants to be seemingly true. Yeah? And the death is nothing but perpetual life, which forgot, disconnected itself from the Supreme. So if we look at this in this way, we will see something else. That the darkness is not what it seems. It's actually the light which is seeking its own oneness, yes, but cannot find it yet. So in order to bring them back, to redeem them, to bring them back to the Supreme, to the oneness, there was another force found which precipitated them from the Mother. And here we come to this, the second creation. When the first involution took place, says the Veda, and the light was turned into the darkness, the creation became as if unsteady. It could not sustain itself, because it was not. In awareness, it was not. He was not there. So his consciousness was not there. So the Supreme Self had to enter and to support it from within, as it were. When he entered, as the Veda says, himself by himself, Atmanatmanam abhisam vivesha, Sanskrit, the creation became steady. So first he cast out of himself all this, and then he enters it with another himself, himself by himself. This is what the text I wanted to read first, but I decided to wait. This is the text from Taittiriya, which is the most puzzling. So kama yata bahusyam prajayeti satapotapyata satapastaptva. So he desired, may I be many. Yeah? And he flamed in tapas, in tapasya, in the force, consciousness force, and having flamed in that concentrated force, idam sarvam asrijata, he cast all this, whatever exists in this world, yadidam kimcha. Tatsrishtva, having cast out of himself means that he's already withdrawing his awareness from his own power, out of himself, tadanupravishat, he entered it, tadanupravishya, and having entered that what he cast out of himself, satchatyacha bhavat, it became this and that, niruktam cha, expressed and unexpressed, nilayanam cha, located and unlocated, vijnanam cha, discerned and undiscerned. Satyam cha nritam cha satyam abhavat. The truth became true and untrue. This is the most, nobody can explain this. Only Sri Aurobindo and the mother with their story gave us a sense why. Why first he cast all this out of himself, what it means out of his awareness, himself out of his awareness, because he wanted another. And to become another, it is not just imagination, it's not hallucination, it is something else. It is a real, he has to be a real other being with whom he would have relations as with another. So in that sense, he had to withdraw his awareness to give a chance for that other to become another. And then with himself, with other greater force, he precipitated these fallen emanations. And from there, this journey starts of evolution out of the darkness. I'm coming back to this. There's a beautiful line in Savitri, when all was plunged in the negating void, non-being's night could never have been saved if being had not plunged into the dark. Non-being's night could never have been saved. So the night was not, and it had to be saved, and it could be saved only by being going inside it, into it. Then when the being is within the night, the hidden being within the night can sustain itself and do its work, work of separation of the beings, creating multitude creation, creating the gap of time and space between himself and himself. In the mother's story, in order to repair the fall of the first emanations, the Supreme Mother, Aditi, delegated out of herself the force of love, which has plunged into the darkness of first creation. In the Vedas, it is Agni, the divine will, the first avatar, who lay down and hid himself within the darkness, the immortal among mortals, according to the Veda, immortal among mortals. It is because of his presence that everyone is evolving, seeking after the higher knowledge of the Supreme within us, within this body, which is unaware of itself. There is someone or something, the spark of the divine, which is pushing the evolution forward to find the oneness, in outside also, and by that redeeming these fallen emanations, which we inherited as our bodies, as our mental, vital and physical bodies. These are the powers, fallen emanations, which we took onto ourselves to build these individual bodies, yes, and by that to do the sacrifice, to offer them to the inner flame, and constantly by transforming them grow in consciousness, yes, to the surface, so to say, where we are not aware. Did you notice on the surface we are hardly aware of ourselves, and if I go into peripheral consciousness, I'm not aware what is beyond these walls. I'm not aware what is there on the street or in the town or in the world. I'm not aware of anything of this. There's a huge gap between me and you, a huge distance and gap and total unawareness. And the deeper I go, the more I'm becoming aware, till I come to the very center, soul, flame within the heart, yes. And there I am aware of the divine. There. So there are the whole gradation from total awareness to total unawareness within this one being. We are of double nature. We inherited these fallen emanations as our bodies, but we are the divine sparks, came here to redeem these fallen emanations, to build the evolution, to build the bodies, open more and more to and receptive more of the spirit. And this is the picture what the Huta made. This is that first avatar who laid at the bottom of the inconscient. Yes, in the Veda, this bottom is described as Adri, is the infinite rock through which nobody can penetrate. It's very dense. The unconsciousness is so dense that no light, no soul can penetrate it. So this avatar, because of him on the bottom, the night could sustain its own being, and the whole manifestation of the divine could proceed in the evolutionary terms. Now, Sri Aurobindo describes evolution in a very interesting way. This is from the Synthesis, one sentence. The soul of the divine is here slowly awaking out of its involution and concealment in the material inconscience. So we started our journey long ago, from the beginning of time. You remember we speak about this amoeba, this monocellular organism, which started to try to communicate, to act, but it didn't have organs to communicate and act. But their consciousness was there already. It needed body. So over 1 billion years, these bodies were built. In this evolution of bodies, species, we arrived at more suitable body of a human body, which can now speak about it, think about the divine. That's what we are doing here. This piece of meat, Vladimir, is talking and thinking and feeling and having experiences. And not only that, communicating it to you. And you are connecting to the same idea. This is the spirit in this material formation. The soul of the divine is here slowly awaking out of its involution and concealment in the material inconscience. Yes, Christoph.
Yeah, after just mentioning the precision with which Aurobindo writes, why do you suppose he said a soul instead of the soul? We're talking about a unity here, right? The unity of the divine. So a soul suggests there could be other ones.
Yeah, there is a reason for it. I think we will keep it as a question. That would be wonderful. If you have an idea why a soul and not the soul, then because it is something which was delegated out of the Supreme in the second stage of creation, it's my answer. But if you have any other thought, because it's multitude creation, because it is something to become, the soul is also evolving. The soul is not here a non-evolutionary being. It is evolving, it is growing within the darkness. It becomes another. We will, wonderful question. So let us dwell on it more before we try to answer. If you have any answer, please come forward, straightforward. So there is a beautiful line in Savitri. I always refer to Savitri because it explains so much better than anything you can say. He, the divine, sleeps in the atom and the burning star. He sleeps in man and God and beast and stone. Because he is there, the inconscient does its work. Because he is there, the world forgets to die. The world, which is not in his awareness, forgets to die, to fall into oblivion because he is there, involved in it. I am maybe a little more, and then I will stop for a break. And then we will come back and we will look into this triple transformation. This terrestrial evolutionary working, this would be interesting for all people studying biology, psychology, you name it, philosophy, has a double process. There is the an outward visible process of physical evolution with birth as its machinery. For each evolved form of body housing its own evolved power of consciousness is maintained and kept in continuity by heredity. Through genome, we pass all the changes to our children, they pass changes to our grandchildren, and so on. It goes on through genome, species evolving, and passing their changes, their adaptation to the environment and relations. And many more new things are discovered about this. And it's not only direct, the most powerful changes, but smallest impressions, what we hear from others, interactions, they are all adjusting our genome in such a way that it is becoming more and more suitable in the future for manifesting a higher capacity of the spirit. There is at the same time an invisible process of soul evolution with rebirth into ascending grades of form and consciousness as its machinery. So there are two evolutions, as it were, going on. One is in the body. That's why body has to have another body. We have to produce the body, which will produce the body. Otherwise, if that lineage is cut, then we are out of material, as it were. But at the same time, the soul comes, takes the body, pushes boundaries forward, and once it exhausts its capacity to stay in the body, learns from it a lot, it leaves. But it comes over several generations to the next body, which is pushed forward by me, by my children, by my grandchildren. So I come always to the better body in the future. So I plunge over several generations to my grandson, who becomes my father. My grandson becomes my father. Speaking, of course, symbolically, because it can be anybody, because we all work for that evolution to push boundaries forward, to build better and more suitable instrument for the spirit. That means to redeem the fallen emanations, make them aware of what they are truly, the divine. They forgot, they lost their connection with the divine. Now they are regaining through this double process of evolution. Yeah? And here I will stop. And if you have any immediate thoughts or questions, then please. If not, then we come back in 10 minutes. I hope I didn't shock you too much, with all this.
I just have a comment. This is just making me think of the fact that the birth rates are going much down in many cultures and many countries, and I'm thinking, oh, that's interesting. Like, what is kind of prompting, like, in people's consciousness, like, that sort of we are, I don't know, diminishing the possibility of future better bodies to come back in a way. I don't know. It was just making me kind of think, well, what's going on in there?
Right. Well, you have any thoughts? Some people are continuing to multiply as if nothing happened. Yes, Navni.
Yeah, I was thinking when you were telling the story about like forgetting, because it seems like that's what he did to create another. He forgot.
You forgot
And
that
that
it was him, yes.
forgetting is, and I was also applying it to myself, like just as a human being, and saying that, okay, if how would I create another different parts of myself, for example, and forget or create this gap even within myself. And forgetting itself seems like a supreme power, even though usually we would look at it negatively because we need to remember. But I'm saying, like, if you don't look at it negatively, even forgetting seems like such a great power in itself.
Yeah, it's a great power, and it's very difficult to forget, truly speaking. Mm. You have to erase something in consciousness. You have to work purposely to really make it refresh yourselves, reboot the system, yes, start anew. That's why we live a certain period, and then when the body is totally overloaded with everything and cannot get anymore, and we are not in sync with the spirit speed, the material, the body which we inherited is weaker, slower. The speed of the spirit is higher, and that mismatch at the end of life becomes so visible that the body has to be dropped. And so new body has to be taken with new capacity, rebooting system, refreshing the whole journey. You have more opportunities now again to be alive. Can you imagine you're born again a child? Everything is possible, so beautiful. So much to do. Yes, Anshul.
That's beautiful, Vladimir, to be reborn as a child. Um, I like what you're saying, Navni, about forgetting, and I'm just inclined to share a few thoughts on that. As first thing that came to me was another name of Shiva, which is Bholenath. He's like the Lord of this transcendental forgetfulness because he forgets. And elsewhere in the Life Divine, in those chapters on ignorance and exclusive concentration, Sri Aurobindo talks about how the the divine does his own tapasya, or kind of energizes all his consciousness to become one thing by this power of self-absorption and exclusive concentration, which enables that to forget that it is all of that, and becomes this mouse and this Anshul and all of that. And that forgetfulness is such a powerful principle and tool. But really, what struck me was, and I've heard this story for emanation, something that one hears as growing up in the ashram school, came on very early on to me as a mythology that created my own mythos. And it wasn't until today that I kind of recognized that, hey, especially Vladimir, when you said that we are the divine spark that's kind of converting them, I realized that all these four powers, and I recognize them very immediately as myself, that falsehood, death, ignorance, pain, these are my most immediate experiences of life, rather than consciousness, truth, bliss, and existence. And there was just a moment of clarity that, hey, that's what I am mostly, is this first creation that took place, and waiting for the second creation to happen, and realized that most of our lives is this first creation, where we're kind of just moved by our nature, by our impulses, desires, thinking it's freedom, but we're just living the dictates of these four powers until we decide that, okay, no, now I want to transform myself or change myself. And that's when the second birth, in a certain sense, begins. And that makes so much sense for the Brahmin who's born twice. First time he's born with just the material and the nature that he is given, and the second time he's born when it's that second birth, so that birth into the spiritual journey, which is this transformation. So I wanted to share that.
You're wonderful. Thank you. This is really true. All this darkness and unconsciousness and falsehood, and all the time we are trying to survive, our survival instincts, where they are coming from. We are always threatened by otherness of self. Yes, it's not me. I don't recognize myself. It's always a threat. I have to shrink back to myself. So it's true. Pain is the biggest kind of chisel of the gods, as Sri Aurobindo says. Yes, which is actually pushing us forward. Yes, because if pain would not be there, we would fall into this oblivion, comfortable oblivion of nothingness. Yeah, being not is very comfortable. Did you notice when we fall asleep, we go to sleep, In the evening, we want to stretch our limbs and forget everything, to fall into total forgetfulness. There's some pleasure in being not. Yeah? No, so we are very complex beings, much more complex than we think. We are the ingredients of these two creations. Yes, Salana.
Yeah, thank you, all of you. I think most of it is covered, but why I raised my hand was the earlier lecture on Agni was just resonating so much more in this lecture. So as in it's the willpower or the divine will, that's the Agni. And then that's what's kind of is helping us to not remove, but comprehend this inner darkness that Anshul mentioned in so many different forms, right? That's the hidden layers in us. And then, and again, it takes back to in the slide, it said the divine will, hidden darkness, and immortal being in the mortal, right? These are all different aspects.
Yep.
Now, that was all reminding me of the meditation power, as the mother said, right? When we're meditating, when we're really in that meditative stage, that's what we do. We look at with the awareness comes at to scan all of the layers of darkness that's in us. And then during that meditative process, that divine light or whatever you want to call it, just that awareness as it comes through those darkness, as we become aware of them, they disperse or it becomes anew with a different meaning.
Absolutely.
So that's what was coming to me.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You bring the awareness to every darkened part and you illuminate and it changes. It becomes the divine part. It finds its proper place. The awareness is everything. Consciousness is everything. So as consciousness fell first to the darkness, the consciousness has to be recovered first. And then it will pull the suffering to bliss. Yeah? So it's the next step. There will be a recovery one step by step. Yes. First awareness, then awareness applied to every painful situation changes painful situation into the bliss, literally, even physically. I'm not speaking about psychologically, physically. Sri Aurobindo converted the bite of the scorpion. There is a whole poem about this, how he, with his application of awareness to that bite of scorpion, is very painful. Yeah, you can be in the agony for hours. And he converted it into pure bliss, ananda. Even physically, not to say psychologically. It's absolutely true. And once that is there, then falsehood can be changed into the truth. Every misplacement of the truth in time and space is falsehood. So you find the right place for everything, where it belongs, where it acts in the dynamic divine way. That is recovery of falsehood, yes? And finally, the last recovery, death, is changing into immortality. But we are far away from it yet. Yes, Adriana.
It's interesting that for me, like the dynamic that's created, because when the Supreme gets back in the second creation, inside that which is cast out of himself, he comes back, let's say, or he comes in a hidden form, right? So that kind of creates like a dynamic of that being or non-being to have to exert the will to let it come out of the hidden format or that seed that is inside, right? So it creates a dynamic that every single non-being will have to kind of tap into that willingness to let it come out. So then it comes back to being itself.
Right, right. And notice that involution is the major concept which we actually always ignored in our understanding of evolution. Nothing can evolve if it is not there involved. Yes. What can be why suddenly life evolved out of matter, material life? Yeah, because it was involved there. Why out of life mind evolved? Because it was involved there. And what is next, Sri Aurobindo says, out of mind, there is supermind evolving out of it because it is involved there. So this unfolding, somebody was mentioning unfolding in his articles, this unfolding of the divine, kind of recovering itself, so to say, through layers, through these fallen emanations in a gradual, long, tardy process of evolution. Why long and tardy? Because it's not so easy to bring these fallen emanations to the supreme self-awareness. It's really not. Yeah? And the individuality has to be maintained and growing into the supreme. Why? Because he wanted to be many. He wanted another. Wow. This is the key to everything. He wanted to be many, and that's how he achieved it. First, he forgot himself totally. Then he precipitated with his force these forgotten fallen emanations. And from there, he started his journey to become many, to become another, and to have relations between himself and himself, multiplying this ananda of unity. So you can imagine there will be many supremes, infinite number of supremes relating to one another through his ananda. That ananda will be millionfold, It will be infinitely multiplied. That's the purpose. The purpose is to multiply the bliss. But yeah, there are so many ways to go around. There are several stories about this. Mother speaks of the gods and their souls. These souls which plunged the power of love. It is our sparks. It is our psychic being. Sri Aurobindo calls them hero souls. We are hero souls because we dared to plunge into the darkness, to take onto ourselves the darkness. And this is called the sacrifice of Purusha, when all his faculties plunged into the inconscient, or the Holocaust of the Divine Mother, when all that power, brilliant, came into the darkness in order to take it onto itself and to bring it slowly through evolution to self-awareness. This is the whole framework of thinking which you will find everywhere in all Sri Aurobindo's writings. It is, of course, spoken directly, as it were. And there is no, I'm afraid to do less justice to it. There are beautiful writings of Sri Aurobindo. There's a work which is called The Involved and Evolving Godhead, which explains everything. It's just a few pages, like 10 pages article. He wrote it in late 1930, already when he was in seclusion. Sri Aurobindo was in seclusion for 24 years in his room. From 1926 to 1950, he was only in his room to do this yoga of supramental, to bring closer that next stage in evolution, which will allow us to get better species, greater mind, which will change all our life on earth. But of course, there are not many such beings who are doing such work, yes, together with the Mother. And all the Rig Veda, all the knowledge suddenly finds its right place, right articulation. Everything becomes meaningful, clear, what it is all about. It's not just a fairy tale. Even science, you take he was always for science. He said that science will help us to discover the truth if they stay honest on their path and will not accept any religious attitude, which science sometimes does. Yes, so if science is true to its own search for the truth, it will discover that actually spirit is behind all this, that this world is the spiritual enterprise. And it is happening already. Look at this, at the physics and nuclear physics and quantum mechanics and mathematics. They already see something beyond. They already speak openly that man is not a matter, it's an energy. If you look at our body, even if you microscope it, you open up, you will see if there are atoms at all. There's a question, big question, where there are nucleus and atoms and photons and protons and electrons. Nowadays, new theories are coming up that it is one electron for all or something. You would not believe what is coming up, you know, because there is no explanation to this energy field. Why? And if you enlarge and if you see these nucleus and then electrons running around building the field, then these nucleus are so small that they are untraceable, but the fields are holding the empty spaces, the energies are holding what we call substance. If I press hand to hand, it's not the hand. They never reach. There is no physical, touching physical. Actually, these are the fields which resist, which I feel as a touch. Penetrative fields. We are living in the marvelous world. We created something for ourselves, for our minds to operate in this world. That is me, my matter. We created medicine. We created all this. But truly speaking, physically speaking, it's a puzzle. It's a mystery. What is happening here, and why this bunch of cells correlate together, work together, and not only work together. There is consciousness embodied in them, awareness, capacity to move, to think, to evolve, to understand, to communicate, to build the worlds. What is all this about? So I'm speaking this in this way to tell you that this language, which we adopted from the Veda and Sri Aurobindo, symbolic language, is the only way to speak about this phenomena. We cannot speak about it in other terms, scientific terms, because science did not arrive to that extent yet. It will arrive in time. You will see. They will be speaking about these things in their own language. Already started. But not yet. But the symbols, experiences are already there. Awareness is there. And with this knowledge, actually, the Rig Veda becomes clear what it is about. Savitri becomes clear. Life divine is easy to read because you understand what he is looking for. He is looking for manifestation of the spirit more and more through the means of nature. And he speaks about three parties have to be participating: the divine, transcendental, nature, universal, and individual in nature, by the means of nature arriving at the divine. And the divine is pulling always nature and individual upward, always calling, as it were. And we cannot stop moving towards it because we are looking for oneness, to this expansion of our consciousness, to become one with all, to have no shrinking from anywhere. We build societies for that, laws for that. They have to help us. But sometimes they are misused also, because they are mental laws. Anyhow, I am very impressed by your level of thinking, and truly speaking, this group is something special. Reading through all your posts. Maybe we are becoming ready for this. Remembering myself like 20 years back, this was hardly possible to speak this way in academic institutions. It was just the language taboo of even mythical structure and thinking in this way. But with time, somehow, that depth is required. This mental operation is not just is not enough. It's just a tool. It's like a scissors or the hammer. It works, yes, if you know how to work with it, but it does not create the truth. The truth has to be there somewhere. All right, I will stop. Let us make a 10 minutes break till 45, okay?